Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. Be quite nice. Have a good time. You'll be very evil. And you'll have that Danhausen.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentary.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And I used to say, hey, Greg Morgan, and he used to say, please call me Greg, and I wouldn't do it.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, SmackDown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cell.
And now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour.
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Lou Thez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries.
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the power.
Listen to the podcast, subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're going to have a problem.
Do it!
Do it.
Do it now!
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
What's going on, everyone? Happy Saturday and welcome to your Winged Eagle podcast for June 18th, 2022. So, how y'all doing? Anything new going on? Anything interesting in your lives? Anything you want to discuss? News looks pretty light. Wow. Today is, I guess, going to be a big one. I think the majority of today's podcast is really going to be centered around the giant, enormous elephant in the fucking room, the Vince McMahon scandal that broke on Wednesday when Wall Street Journal released an article claiming that the WWE board was investigating Vince McMahon for misconduct allegations, improper relationship with an employee, sexual relationship with an employee, and all sorts of juicy details to go along with it. The story then progressed all the way through to last night, with Vince McMahon stepping away from WWE as CEO, but still appearing on SmackDown in a very weird segment. and a lot surrounding this whole situation. We're going to finally deep dive this. I haven't really had a chance to talk about it. When the story broke on Wednesday, we were up here for the Dynamite watch-along. We spoke a little bit about it, but even then, we know very little. Few details, that is, about this whole situation. It took a couple of more days for more reports to come out, and now that we've made it to the weekend, and there has been some pretty big announcements coming out of WWE in terms of how they're handling this. I've done my best to organize my notes here and go through everything that we're going to discuss. I've had easier times organizing my garage than I have organizing these Vince McMahon notes, because there's a lot of information and a lot more information to come out. And I think this is easily the biggest wrestling story of the year, probably of the last 5 years, and might likely be the closest Vince McMahon is going to come to really getting his nuts cut off here. This man has survived everything from, the federal government coming after him, several different scandals and the steroid stuff, and, deaths, all these terrible scandals and, dark moments in WWE. Vince has been able to survive everything, and I think it would be kind of ironic if this is something that winds up doing him in. But we'll be talking about the what ifs, the speculation, how many people believe Vince isn't going anywhere. Others believe he could actually be in some trouble here. We'll go through what we know. We'll get feedback from all of you guys, and we'll just try to unpack this as best as we can, because there's just a lot of information. And I said on Wednesday that I think Wednesday, could very well go down as a pretty significant day in wrestling history, because it could very well likely see the beginning of a very, very different looking WWE in the future. We all have felt like WWE's been preparing themselves for a sale anyway. You've seen people lose power like Triple H, like Shane McMahon, like Stephanie McMahon, only to now be stepping in as the interim CEO. WWE's in some fucking turmoil right now. I think internally, it's business as usual. Vince's attitude last night at SmackDown at TV, I'm sure, was business as usual. But it ain't business as usual behind the scenes. Shit is crazy, and we're going to talk all about it here today. So I want to thank you guys for being here. Please do me a favor, smash that thumbs up button for me if you don't mind. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Also, shoot me a follow over on Twitter at GoodMikeWork, and you can visit GoodMikeWorkCommentaries.com if you would like to download an MP3 of this episode or listen wherever podcasts are found. So just keep all that stuff in mind, and there's some good links and stuff down in the description. So please check that out, and thanks for being here. Let me go over here to the chat, shout out some people who are here, shout out some patrons, knock out some super chats, and then we will dive into the Vince McMahon stuff. So here is what we're going to get into pretty much in order. Obviously, we got to start with Vince. We're going to really look at that and try to analyze it and speculate on it as best as we can. We're also going to talk about the rumors of Sasha Banks being released. Many have reported that they have heard that Sasha Banks has been released. There has been no confirmation from WWE about this. However, there's been some pretty reliable sources that are claiming this is likely legit. So we will discuss her future, whether it is or isn't legitimate, but it does look like Sasha Banks is released, and honestly, I'm not surprised. I don't know why there's been such aggressive debating on Twitter, and I have no idea why Raj Giri, who's a credible source, who I like, is being attacked for something that he just reported that he heard. It's not a big deal. She's either gone or she's not. No reason to fucking freak out, but it wouldn't be that big of a surprise if she was released, considering she walked the fuck out and she doesn't have much time on her contract left anyway. WWE's probably just cutting her losses, letting her go, because they know she ain't coming back. So we'll talk about that and what that could mean. Also, we want to pay our respects and condolences to Dave Hebner, who passed away yesterday, I believe, longtime WWE official and referee and twin brother of Earl. And we'll talk about him a little bit. We'll also talk about just what a crazy few weeks in general it's been in the wrestling world in terms of news. I mean, we have had the CM Punk injury. We've had the MJF stuff, the Cody injury. We've had Sasha and Naomi walking out. Randy Orton's injured. Bryan Danielson is injured. Brock Lesnar comes back. All this Vince McMahon stuff. The story that broke this week. It's just been a crazy few weeks. So, yeah. We're also going to talk about AEW Dynamite this past week that drew one of its lowest ratings ever, which is pretty surprising. And we will run through a couple of the key moments from last night's SmackDown. Of course, Riddle did get his WWE title match against Roman Reigns. That saw the return of Brock Lesnar. Not going to go through all the results on that show, but we are going to talk a little bit about what happened last night and run through the Rampage results as well. So it's not going to be a very detailed episode in terms of like wrestling results and storylines. We're going to touch on some of that, but mostly, we're going to be focusing on Vince McMahon today. I did not check my sound. Can you hear me? You can hear me and see me, right? We are good to go. I'm going to cruise to the chat first and say hello to Jay Lambo and Population 420. Rodrigo, Low Justin, FTP. We got Michael Cuomo right on some monkey wrenches. Leave, comment. Selena, Talal. We've got Sam, Big J, Chaz, How Wheezy, another monkey wrench. Matos, Tatanani, Jet the Hawk, Zane G, David Brown, Austin, No, Laura. Thank you so much for being here, all of you guys. And, sorry to hear about that, David. Best wishes to your mother. Really hope that she's doing okay. Glad to hear she's resting and back at home. Best of luck, David. As always, we love you. Chris Miner, appreciate the $2 you dropped in. Hi, Greg. Are you just going to welcome us, then leave? Yes. And the most important word is together. See you later. Unplug my mic and just walk away. Y'all can talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. George Morris in the house. Appreciate the 5 as always, dude, with your weekly 5. Hey, Greg, how are you doing? And how is Bub and Tito? And Watch Along are you doing tomorrow? And Conrad, new podcast, Mick Foley and Jake Dallas Page. Jesus, you say a lot. Yes, I've heard about Mick Foley's podcast, Foley is Pod. I have not got a chance to listen to it yet, but I've seen several positive reviews about it. So Conrad has 78 podcasts. I can't even keep track. But the Mick Foley one sounds like it could be a lot of fun, so I need to give that a listen. I do have a flight coming up in a couple of weeks to Hawaii. I'm going to be in the air for several hours, so I'll try to knock some of those out when I go on vacation. My boys, of course, are doing great. Thank you for asking, as always, George, and I appreciate you being here. Good to see Trey Williams and James in the house, Ratnick, Andy, and Ronnie. What up, dude? Good to see you as well. Deshaun Robinson is here. I got all my friends here. This is just fantastic. Thank you for the $2, Population 420. Got a chance to meet that young man at SummerSlam last year. SummerSlam last year in Vegas does not even seem that long ago, and it's almost time for SummerSlam again. That's when Brock came back to confront Roman, and now they're going to be facing in a last man standing match. We got Margie, Danny, Ed, Jamie, Monique, Robert, right on. We got a lot of people in here, so I probably better stop with these shout-outs because we'll be here all day. Big Glenn, David Hosea, Stevie, Solutions, Castellar, G-Man, Stephen Scott. Right on. I better stop. Let's cruise over to Patreon. I want to thank all of the current Patreon subscribers, including new subscriber Joseph Hudson. Thank you very much, my friend. And, oops, I clicked off my page there. Sorry, clicked on my messages instead of my my subscribers. And now I got to get all back to it. But anyway, thank you very much, Joseph Hudson, for joining the crew. Also, Chris Broski, Divine Ricks, JJ Legg, Nikita Abalakin, Chris Miner, Super Fluffy Toaster, Deshaun Robinson, Martin Can, Apron Bump Podcast, Alan Carter, Brandon Yelverton, Nick Musser, Jimmy Anderson, K-Dogs Kennel, Ryan Y, Devlin Husband, John Redifer, Claudio Klabadetcher, Daniel Rodriguez, Reese Jones, Barry MK, Josiah Blevins, John Riffle. We got Michael Kumo, Naveed, Keith Salyers, and Blake Moran, as always, dudes. Thank you for everything. I appreciate that. Well, let's start talking. Let's start talking Vince McMahon. Holy shit, guys. This is quite the story. Quite the story. Do you ever, begin a big task and you don't know how you're going to start? All I could think of to do is here kind of go in order with some of the information that we started receiving this week. I'm going to need a big, nice gulp of water for this, too. By the way, up in the air on the watch-along for tomorrow. Tomorrow is Slammiversary. I don't know if I want to do a watch-along going head-to-head with that because many of you might be interested in Slammiversary. I don't really watch Impact, so I won't be watching the show, but I'm a little bit on the fence in terms of a watch-along. But I've had a really busy week. We did a Judgment Day 2000 review yesterday. I think I actually have... I have the link right down in the description there if you want to check that out. We did a live review yesterday, so I need to kind of get home tonight, regroup. I'll think about a watch-along. If I decide to do one, I'll make that decision, post the link tonight, but there's a chance we might not do one tomorrow either, so I'm really not sure yet. Sorry for not knowing that. I just got to kind of give that some thought, but if we do one, I'll tell you what I'm going to be drinking. Shout out to my girlfriend Elizabeth, who just came home with some Stone Cold Steve Austin Broken Skull American Lager. I've been drinking the IPAs, which are really strong. He now has a more easy drinking beer that I will be cracking open tomorrow if we do, in fact, do a watch-along. So, cheers to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, we can start talking about the Vince McMahon stuff. Like I said, we're going to just kind of go in order here in terms of what we were learning beginning this week. Now, on Wednesday, a few hours before Dynamite went live, the Wall Street Journal posted an article that reported that Vince McMahon is under investigation by the WWE board for Misconduct allegations, an improper relationship with an employee, a sexual relationship with a paralegal that was paid $100,000 for 1 year, bumped the pay up to $200,000 for the next year. Apparently, she then quit, and Vince McMahon had paid her $3 million, I believe $1 million up front and another $2 million to be distributed over a period of time as basically a hush money settlement. And she signed an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, where she cannot speak about any of this stuff. And that is what the board was, I guess, alerted of. There was an email sent apparently by this woman's friend. They kind of detailed some of the allegations here. There's also been a lot of talks that somebody internally probably leaked this information to the board as well, and trying to get the ball rolling, knowing that Vince could be ripe for a fall here given the information that they know. So they had this information. They then began looking into it. I think they knew way back in, I don't know, April or May or so, last month or something, that the investigation was going to be beginning. There's even some talk of Kevin Dunn being investigated for insider trading, for selling some of the stock before the investigation started. We'll talk a little bit about that too. But basically, in the Wall Street Journal article, it alleged some pretty disturbing things about that. Now, one thing that should be clear here right up front is this does appear to be a totally consensual adult relationship. However, in the corporate world, Vince McMahon, as we'll talk about later, does have an employment agreement, that does clearly state relationships like this go against company policy. And it's one thing, back in the day before they're a publicly traded company and you're messing with shareholder money here. When you're messing just with your own money, it's your company, it's all coming out of your own pocket. I guess you can pay and do and be as scummy and corrupt as you want. But in a corporate environment, you got to be careful and mind your P's and Q's here. And I think the story even alleged that the $3 million settlement was actually Vince's money and not stockholder money, but the salary was stockholder money. So that could really cause a lot of problems for Vince McMahon. So we got that article with some pretty gnarly details in there, even naming John Laurinaitis as another major player in this. Now, she was originally a paralegal, then was gifted, the article alleges that she was gifted to John Laurinaitis, given to him like a gift to be his personal assistant, and he also had a sexual relationship with her. So Vince at the time is, 74, 73. John Laurinaitis is however old. This woman, I think, is only in her 40s. Both these men are married, although Vince and Linda have been pretty much separated for quite some time. Laurinaitis, however, is married to the Bella Twins' mother, correct? Isn't she even going through brain cancer? Jesus, man. So that's got to be a pretty uncomfortable Christmas day this year when everybody's sitting around the Christmas tree in the Bella household. So, none of this is that surprising. I mean, scuzzy things always go on at the big-time corporate level, and I'm sure, billionaires behave and misbehave all the time. This is nothing new. We've seen CEOs and heads of big companies fall. I know that, was it MSNBC or CNN? The guy in charge of that, he got taken out for largely much of the same stuff. A lot of these sexual misconduct allegations and improper relationships can push you out of your position. And Vince McMahon has been pretty nonchalant with stuff. He just kind of goes and does whatever he wants, no matter how weird, how crazy he acts. He somehow always survives really, really strong public scrutiny. Even when the public is all up his ass, he somehow just seems to survive all of the stuff, especially 20 years ago when WWE programming was getting a lot of press for, the content and, the racy nature of it and stuff like that. And, not to mention the steroid stuff and the Benoit stuff, the Owen stuff, and all of the shit that WWE has gone through. Vince has always fought like hell against all these things here. So I always, felt that maybe Vince in his head thinks that he is bulletproof and thinks that these things are completely okay. But once you take your company public and you got board of directors and you got shareholders, the rules change, and they change big time. And I've always thought about that. But back in the 80s, the 70s, and especially the 80s when Vince took over from his dad in 81 or 82, the Rhodes stories you would hear, the behavior of Vince McMahon, it was just a fucking party. Every night on the road, every week on the road was Mardi Gras. The crazy drinking stories, the bar fights, the crazy shit people would do in hotel rooms. Even Vince McMahon himself has got a couple of crazy stories. Remember Bret Hart told the one of Vince being at the strip club and he took the Hart Foundation's finisher right there at the strip club and stuff. So Vince has fun, and Vince parties and does his thing even while still being, a crazy workaholic madman. So Vince has always had some, skeptical behavior. And I honestly am surprised it has taken until the year 2022 for someone to actually come forward and for someone to really oust Vince as, doing some shady shit. And one of the things that was mentioned in the article is that the investigation is not only, and the board, by the way, has retained a law firm to conduct this investigation, it should be noted here. And their job is not only to look into this current situation, but also look into past situations, past payments and settlements made, and other NDAs. And trust me, there are more, probably a lot more. And there's going to be some skeletons flying out of the WWE's closet if this investigation is as thorough as I kind of hope it will be. And that, I think, is a big deal. The fact that they're not just looking into this, but they're looking into everything. And they're going to start looking through WWE's books, looking at some of this money paid out, where this money was going, whose money it is, and if anything was used improperly. Now, that all broke on Wednesday, so everybody was like, holy shit, this could be a big deal, or it could not be a big deal. There are plenty of people out there in the world that think that this is not going to affect anything in terms of the day-to-day operations in WWE, and they're probably right. I think Vince, even though, he's stepped aside, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I think he's still going to be very, very much involved, and I think Stephanie's announcement of being the interim CEO should tell you all you need to know there. But there are plenty of people that think that Vince is going to get away with this scot-free, and that might be the case, but it also might not, like we'll talk about in a minute. Now, WWE yesterday released a statement, so everything kind of bubbled and simmered on Thursday after we got the bombshell on Wednesday. And then yesterday, a few hours ahead of SmackDown, we get a statement from WWE, this was early in the morning, announcing that Vince McMahon is stepping down as CEO until the investigation concludes. It was a whole statement you can read on WWE's corporate website. But at the very end of that paragraph, it did say that Vince McMahon will retain his role and responsibilities related to WWE's creative content. The one area that Vince McMahon needs to step away from in this company is the one area that he's not stepping away from. In his chair-shot riddled brain, he believes this company cannot creatively survive without his input. I think the company would get infinitely better without his creative input. But he's stepping aside from his CEO duties, which a lot of his duties have been reduced as he's been getting older. Nick Khan has been moving up the corporate ladder and has assumed a lot of Vince McMahon's corporate responsibilities already. And the fact that he's stepping aside here, and the WWE statement went on to announce that Stephanie McMahon will be taking over as interim CEO. Stephanie McMahon, Vince McMahon's daughter, the very same woman that they just pushed out, claiming that she was going to go spend time with family when clearly they were just not happy with her job performance. They buried this woman on the way out. And now she's coming back in to step in for Vince McMahon, take over for her dad, and until the investigation concludes. Now, WWE's statement also did include a quote from Vince McMahon, which reads, and I quote, "I have pledged my complete cooperation to the investigation by the special committee, and I will do everything possible to support the investigation. I also have pledged to accept the findings and outcome of the investigation, whatever they are." So he's pledging here to accept the findings and the outcome. Is he going to accept the consequences is the big question. He can accept the outcome. Yeah, I did it. I accept it, but I'm not leaving. Wolf of Wall Street, I'm not fucking leaving. So is he going to accept what they recommend? Or is it even really a matter of a recommendation? Can they actually force him out? I think part of the reason why Vince McMahon stepped away was probably advice from, Jerry McDevitt and some of the other people around him, but also stepping down so he isn't forced out, because that would be the last thing that Vince McMahon wants, is to be pushed out of his own company. This way he controls his narrative, this way he leaves on his own terms, and this way he gets to go out in front of the SmackDown crowd and soak up the adulation from a bunch of idiots. I wonder why Vince McMahon and Donald Trump are friends. These two are exactly alike. Anytime there's heat put on them, anytime Donald Trump had a scandal, which there was like one every fucking day, what did he do? He would lash out on social media or schedule a rally so he can be surrounded by people who love him, because he's feeling down. And Vince McMahon is like the same way. Every time he's had a confrontation with somebody, the Bob Costas shit. Remember the Denver Nuggets ordeal? Whatever the owner of the Denver Nuggets, Kroenke, I think, or whatever it was, and there was the NBA playoff game that bumped Raw out of that arena. So I think they went to Staples Center instead. And Vince McMahon made the entire thing about his personal vendetta with an NBA owner because of a situation that could easily happen anywhere. And he went so over the top with it. You don't trust your team to make the playoffs. He even went on ESPN and completely ghosted Coach. Did an interview with Jonathan Coachman, a man who used to work for him, and pretended he never met him. Everything in the Monday Night Raw, he brought out the fake Kroenke and they beat him up and they made the fucking 10-man tag with the Nuggets and the Lakers jerseys. Vince is so obsessed with shit like that. The federal government, when they were attacking him for the steroids, when they took him to court for the steroid stuff, I remember him making a statement on WWE TV or something where he's lashing out at them. Phil Mushnick lashes out at him, although Phil Mushnick was a jerk-off. But anybody that has any sort of criticisms for Vince McMahon, or whenever he starts to feel the heat personally, he's so over the top with his response because he's probably fucking insecure. I think Vince McMahon's a little bit stronger of a person, stronger-willed person than maybe a Donald Trump, who's extremely insecure, who constantly needs, to be stroked by his minions. And Vince has a lot of that in him too, along with, the scuzziness and the hush money. So we got hush money in the bank coming up in a couple of weeks. And, Vince, I have no doubt, is guilty of any of this stuff. But I also don't believe that Vince McMahon, even though he has had some allegations against him, Vince has never come across, although I've never met him and never spent significant time with him, but from everybody that we've heard who knows Vince well, we've never heard stories about Vince like we hear about Ric Flair, forcing himself on women, exposing himself to women. There was that incident in Florida with the massage therapist, may or may not be true there. Vince has had a couple of stories against him, but I think generally any misconduct or sexual perversion that he does is probably all consensual in my mind. It's just these are behaviors that are against big corporations' policies, which is what could land him in trouble. So I don't think Vince is, a rapist or a fornicator or a sexual abuser or anything like that. I've never heard any, even back in the day, Sonny and Sable, my God, Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn too, they were obsessed with those two, especially Sable. And as much as a fucking prick as Sable was, I never once heard her come out and say Vince made her uncomfortable or anything like that. So a lot of this just has to do with just gross old billionaire white man behavior is all it is. And that's why I think it's so funny that even though Vince isn't in any legal trouble where the steroid scandal could have landed him in jail, something like this, just fucking somebody 40 years younger than you, could land you out of your company. And I think that's just a delicious irony that something like this, that's technically not illegal, is what might actually push Vince McMahon out. But Vince McMahon isn't going anywhere, a lot of people say. He's not going anywhere. He's Vince McMahon. He's going to dig his claws in, and you're going to have to, throw him out of the White House. Basically, just like we said, people, a whole year before the election, I'm like, when that fool loses, he's going to refuse to leave. That's exactly what happened. With Vince McMahon, luckily, he's got some legal people around him likely guiding his decision-making here, because if he's allowed just to fly by the seat of his pants, he's going to get himself in trouble. But there's many people that feel that Vince is still the same old Vince, and he will fight his ass off to keep control of his company. But regardless of how much voting power he has, regardless of how much stock he owns, he is not bulletproof from losing control of his company. Shout out to Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, who posted a copy of Vince McMahon's employment agreement with WWE. You can read this giant Scrabble paragraph of legal mumbo jumbo over on Brandon's Twitter account at Brandon Thurston. But basically, the agreement states that the board can terminate the CEO or remove him under certain conditions. Those conditions include a lot of stuff: embezzlement, theft, negligence, or the biggest one, intentional failure to follow company policies or directives. That's important because he did that. He's guilty of that. He did not. If this investigation, which I'm sure it will, uncovers that yes, he did have a relationship with this woman, and yes, he paid to shut her up, that right there is intentional failure to follow company policies or directives. It's written right there. Doesn't matter in my mind, how much stock or voting power he has. If he's in violation of these things, according to the employment agreement, he can be removed. It remains to be seen if that happens, but it's right there. And, you know, and there's also been a lot of talk about John Laurinaitis. Oh, they're just going to make, everybody's got the same opinion about this. They're just going to make John Laurinaitis the scapegoat. And they're going to just let him go, and he's going to take the heat for it. Well, he's named in there just as much as Vince McMahon is. If anything, Vince is the center of this thing, and John Laurinaitis is the afterthought. So how does that work? How do you present that to your board members, to your stockholders? We're going to release the other guy that was guilty, not even as guilty as much as Vince McMahon, but we're going to fire him, and hopefully that'll make it go away or make it right. It doesn't. Vince McMahon, you know, the main culprit in this whole thing, still retains his job. So is using Laurinaitis as a scapegoat even going to work? I don't think so. So Vince McMahon, of course, in WWE, responded to this news of him stepping down by announcing that he would be on SmackDown on Friday or last night. So within like just a couple of hours, they announced that he's stepping down, but he's also going to appear on SmackDown. That confused the hell out of the entire wrestling world. I'm sorry, what now? You're going to appear on SmackDown? You're going to appear on SmackDown? What are you going to say? Is Jerry McDevitt okay with this? Are there people around you that think this is a good idea? 48 hours after, you know, one of the biggest stories to ever happen to WWE breaks, you're going to go on TV now as your Mr. McMahon character? Because he knows he's going to go out in front of that crowd because wrestling fans are weird and his music is going to play and they're all going to sing it. They're going to do the "we're not worthy" thing. They're going to cheer for him and he's going to soak it up because he's a megalomaniac and he needs that shit. You know, like he feels the heat and he's got to get his, you know, he's just got to be, you know, reinforced that he really is some godlike figure. And I had to work last night. I was like, what the hell is he going to say? I'm dying to know what this fool is going to say. How stupid could one person be to go out there and say anything at all? So you guys quickly informed me while I was at work last night via Twitter, because I couldn't watch it, that Vince McMahon simply came out to the ring. He opened the show, by the way. And of course, crowd goes nuts, singing his song. He's just walking out there doing his thing like nothing happened. Such a typical Vince response, too. I will give him that. At least he's consistent. And he comes out there and he gets in the ring and he basically just repeats the WWE signature opening. Then, now, forever, and the most important word, together. Welcome to SmackDown. And then just tosses the mic and walked away. Does he think, and walks away, does he think that the board members or the firm that they've hired to investigate are going to see that he came out there and got cheered and say, oh, well, everybody loves him, he must be innocent, or let's just forget the whole thing? It's like Vince wants to remind everybody that fans love him and he's popular. You can get a reaction, you know, I mean, Jericho's a heel. Everybody sings his song. You know, fans just behave that way. Yes, I think the fans are idiots to even go out there and praise Vince McMahon, whether in person or on Twitter. I couldn't believe how many people were saying, boy, Vince was really smart going out there. I'm like, are you fucking high? Are you high as a motherfucking fuck to say that? Oh my God. Smart? It was idiotic. As a matter of fact, I bet you that wasn't even the original plan. He probably was going to go out there and say more, but somebody got through to him and said, Vince, just go out there and say something, get the fuck out of there. If you start acknowledging this or something, you're just going to dig yourself in deeper. Not a good idea. This man has no accountability at all for his actions. He just, from the little bit that we saw of him last night, no remorse, couldn't give two fucks that he behaved like a creepy fucker. Just out there, just soaking it up, and basically, without saying anything, he let us know that he's not going anywhere. And Stephanie is simply a placeholder for him until this gets resolved. He's not immediately coming out and denying allegations. He's not immediately coming out and proclaiming his innocence or anything like that. He's basically just saying, investigate what you want. I ain't going anywhere. And I think that's kind of shitty. Now, after SmackDown last night, Fightful Select posted an article about some of the backstage reaction to Vince McMahon's SmackDown appearance last night. And I want to read this because there were some interesting notes coming out of it. So some additional notes on the segment from last night. It wasn't featured on the internal scripts as of 5:30 Eastern or the rundown we gained access to at 7:50 Eastern. One person suggested the segment did not happen as originally planned this morning. Vince McMahon was said to have been in a good mood backstage and not outwardly reacting to the investigation. Business as usual was a term constantly reiterated backstage. Few knew what Vince McMahon was going to say to kick off the show. Reactions that we received, unsolicited, ranged from confused to disappointed to enraged. A top talent immediately contacted Fightful and said it was, quote, tone deaf and embarrassing, and believed it was, end quote, and believed it was his way of putting himself on screen as a power move to lessen the impact of an investigation's findings, which is exactly what I just said. A former top talent who left the company said that, I'm happy it didn't last long, so I didn't have to sit through whatever bullshit he was going to say. But it shows that he has no accountability, especially when something is directly his fault. Very true. Article goes on to say, finally, a person who had worked with Vince McMahon said they were enraged by the appearance and were hopeful that this was the type of situation he'd handle more seriously. The person sourced was backstage at the show and said that they were incredulous watching it unfold. So reaction to Vince behind the scenes doesn't seem good, and I can imagine, the little bit that we do know of the talent and the little bit we do know of their personality, I can understand a lot of the talent being really disgusted with him going out there. I know I would be, and it would be really hard for me to go out there and give it, my 110% physical effort every night for a company and a boss that I don't respect. And I just wonder, how much ripple effect this will have. I think WWE and the company is pretty strong, and they understand this stuff, and they're going to damage control the fuck out of it, and they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that their talent stays, happy and secure, and some of their bigger pieces they try to keep around. And if there are any bigger pieces who have contracts coming up, they might be a little worried that they want out. And I don't believe WWE at this time should really have any business denying anybody a release, especially lower-level talent. If Roman Reigns wants his release, I can understand you being a little hesitant to do that. I'm not stupid. But when it comes to Mustafa Ali, Roderick Strong, anybody on that level that desperately wants out from underneath that shit rock that is WWE, you should let them go. You've got no business at this point trying to dictate someone else's life when you have so little regard for, rules or just fucking personal human decency. So I don't think that they should be acting that way to any talent that wants to leave, especially if they approach WWE and say, look, I'm kind of grossed out by this whole thing. I'm not comfortable working here anymore. I wish there was some language and stuff in their contracts that would allow them to bounce if shit got a little bit gnarly at the top corporate level or something like that. I don't know how any of these contracts are structured. But, that's all beside the point. I would imagine, though, that there could be a lot of people. WWE employs a lot of people, not only talent, but staff. Production crew guys and makeup people and office staff and producers and writers. Talent. Hundreds of people are at every single show that they produce. You would imagine out of those hundreds of people, a large chunk are pretty goddamn grossed out by Vince McMahon and the way and these allegations. Probably a lot of people have already always known this type of stuff. I'm curious to know how much Bruce Pritchard knows. He's nursing a shoulder injury, I think, at the moment, a rotator cuff. Don't even know his whereabouts backstage at the moment. But he's got to know some of this stuff. There's a lot of people internally in WWE that know a lot. And so, what is the investigation going to uncover? What are people going to leak out? And people's speculation has been running wild. We were just shooting the shit on Wednesday. I knew nothing of what I was saying. But, when it comes to this information being leaked, I was under the assumption that, the friend of this woman is who leaked it to the board. But there's also talk about somebody internally, probably leaking something. And there's probably a lot of people in WWE that know stuff about Vince McMahon that could leak some information that could get him in trouble. I jokingly speculated about Nick Khan. These businessmen, these corporate businessmen, they're ruthless as hell. They might target companies. They might look for a company that's got some weird guy at the top that they know they can take down if they get in there, establish trust, and work there for a number of years and then set the owner up for a fall so they can take over. Maybe that's what Nick Khan was doing. I know Vince and Khan go way back and they got a long relationship, but I don't know how far back that exactly goes. So maybe at some point in the past, Nick Khan looked at WWE and say, that guy's out of his fucking mind. If I go work for that company and work my way up the corporate ladder and become a trusted, number one to Vince, and I can actually make it up that far and be the vice president or his right-hand man or whatever on the corporate level, then I can just leak what I already know about the guy. He's out, I'm in. And that might really happen at the corporate level. It really might. I don't know. But either way, somebody was tipped off to this information. Either way, somebody has finally decided to get some revenge on Vince McMahon. And they leaked this info, and now WWE's under all sorts of shit. Now, we had all heard that there was actually, too, like a Netflix biopic in production of Vince McMahon. There were some rumors that Bradley Cooper was going to play the role of Vince McMahon. It seemed like the project was on the shelf for a while. I don't even know the status of it now. It might be completely shelved already, but if it's not and it's still in the works, I'm curious how that's going to affect any of that in the future. And the stuff about Kevin Dunn as well. Kevin Dunn, it's been reported that he's been being investigated for insider trading, for selling his stock after, maybe back in April or something after learning of the incoming investigation. Now, many people have pointed out that he's not on the board anymore. He's not a member of the board of directors, but that doesn't matter. If you sell stock after learning some insider information, that's still insider trading. So I don't know really the ins and outs of that, but he could be looking into some trouble. There's also the reports that Kevin Dunn and Stephanie McMahon don't get along. So if Stephanie and Kevin don't get along, shouldn't that tell you, considering how long Kevin Dunn has been there and the fact that he's not going anywhere right now, that the Stephanie McMahon CEO is truly interim? It is going to be temporary. And I think Vince McMahon is probably still going to be running a lot of stuff, including the creative direction, as we all know, from the sidelines. He'll still be at TV. He'll still be on the corporate jet. He'll still be in the office. He's not even really going to go anywhere, I don't think. But it's going to be most interesting when the investigation concludes, and then we learn of the findings and we learn of the results of the findings. That's where it could get really juicy. So clearly, there's a lot going on in WWE. We don't know where it's all going to land or how it's all going to end up. All I know is, and all we know is, it's pretty damn messy and could really possibly spell the demise of Vince McMahon's role in WWE. I never thought I would live to see the day. I thought Vince McMahon would die right there, sitting at Gorilla with a headset on his head, and he just stopped moving. He just die right there. He was never going to leave. He was always going to be a complete workaholic. I don't understand why. This guy is a billionaire. I'd be sitting at my Florida home, just kicking back on the beach with a drink and a coconut shell or something. My God, I would not be, working tirelessly day and night and producing a completely boring, redundant, watered-down product that is the most formulaic crap you could ever put out. I can't tell the difference between one week and another in WWE. Every Raw is the goddamn same. Every SmackDown's the same. Every segment's the same. Everything's structured the same. Every promo's the same. Every entrance is the same. It's all the same. And for him to still be working as hard as he did in the Attitude Era, even right now, just seems a little bit weird. He should be turning shit over to other folks. Your ratings can't even get any goddamn lower than they already are. And speaking of ratings, I think that's another reason why Vince chose to appear on SmackDown last night, because he knows he would spark a huge rating for that, especially with all the news and Vince McMahon dominating the headlines. I believe Dave Meltzer was on, CNN? I haven't even seen that yet. There's been, the news media has picked this up. There's been articles, and there's been news pieces on this. People in the wrestling business have been interviewed. Everybody is putting in their 2 cents in terms of what's going on with Vince. Vince knew that, and so if WWE announced that he's going to be showing up on SmackDown, they can use that to draw a rating. They are using a terrible situation, an embarrassing situation, and one that could finally unseat Vince McMahon as the head of WWE, and they're still going to use it to get people to tune into their shows. Dirty. Dirty fucking people. I tell you, man, WWE gets grosser and grosser by the day. I don't know where I sit in this. I hope Vince McMahon is held accountable for whatever he did. That's all I can say. Just as much as I hope Jeff Hardy and Sonny and anybody else is accountable for whatever they did. I think this is a long time coming from Vince. He's had so many sketchy-ass stories and allegations. The big one from back in 83 or whatever, when Jimmy Snuka killed his girlfriend. And the story of Vince McMahon showing up at the police station with a briefcase seemingly full of money to get Snuka off of the charges so he could keep Snuka in WWE, because at that time, Hogan wasn't there yet. Snuka was Hogan. Snuka was really their biggest star at that time. And Vince McMahon just purchased the company from his dad, literally just did that, hadn't even began the first WrestleMania yet, hadn't gotten into the rock and wrestling area yet. That was his guy. And there was rumors, and we don't know if that's true or not, but there's rumors that Vince McMahon did have something to do with Snuka getting out of that whole deal. And back then, police investigations maybe weren't as refined as they are today, and evidence is, not as easily collected or whatever it was. But Snuka somehow got off of all of that for years before finally being brought to justice for it when he was old. But then he passed away shortly after that. So Vince has always been involved in some sketchy shit. We know that. And that's why I think it's almost comical that the one thing that might wind up doing him in is one of the... It's crazy to say this, but it's one of the least offensive things he's ever done. Like, this is something I would expect, from Vince, is, just fucking some woman who works for him who he thinks is hot. And that seems typical Vince, because we know he's gross. But if this is what winds up doing it, that would be pretty damn crazy. That's for sure. Now, this woman apparently has been ousted her identity by that used condom filled with shit that's floating down the sewer named Brad Shepard, who went out of his way to let everybody know who this woman is. Somebody who has signed an NDA, by the way, who can't even defend herself if she wants to, is now subjected her to all sorts of idiotic abuse, harassment, and probably stalking from a lot of the very, very insane wrestling audience. And it's funny. Again, I think it's silly and irresponsible and dumb to bring up a wrestling war in something like this. But it is funny how all those crazy AEW hating nut jobs were awfully quiet. And if they're not quiet, they're brushing off. They're downplaying this situation. Imagine if it was Tony Khan. This man, Tony Khan, gets annihilated by wrestling fans for being a goofy wrestling fan, billionaire turned promoter. Somebody, a type of person that I have maintained for years on this channel. I said if wrestling is ever going to get away from having one company dominating the market, it's not going to be some big company starting a wrestling company or anybody like that. It has to be one guy with money who loves wrestling, like a Mark Cuban or somebody like that. We've got Tony Khan, lifelong wrestling fan, more money than he knows what to do with, passionate, loves wrestling, loves the history of wrestling, loves giving people opportunities, loves the business in general, begins a wrestling company, and fans hate him. They hate the one type of person that wrestling fans should want running a wrestling company, instead of a corporate asshole or somebody who doesn't give a shit about wrestling at all, or a parent company that's just going to be looking at the bottom line and can cut ties with you at any time. You want something more stable, more secure than that. That's why TNA didn't make it, because they were fucking all over the place with the ownership and stuff. You need stability, well-funded passion, and that's what they have. AEW's not going to do everything perfect. There's a bunch of shit. They do a bunch of dumb segments and boring matches from time to time and maybe book things a little bit differently than some fans would have booked. But in terms of a wrestling company being here and the type of owner you want, that's the one you want. This guy is raked over the coals constantly for defending CM Punk or, telling Eric Bischoff to fuck off or just being a little bit weird in general. Everybody think, oh, Tony Khan's on cocaine all the time. Bitch, you think Vince McMahon hadn't done a little toot-toot before in his life? Come on. To attack somebody for simply being a wrestling fan and then defending obvious, gross, reprehensible behavior by a nasty businessman who's ruthless, cutthroat. WWE treats their talent like complete pieces of shit for the most part, other than what they pay him. They jerk him around. They mess him around. Just listen to what Tony Storm recently said and the constant day-to-day clusterfuck that is the backstage life in WWE. Never know what you're doing. Never know if you're a heel or babyface. Never know what show you're on. Never know what the plans are for yourself. You know, you never know anything. You just show up to work and hope that you don't hate it too bad. And that's sad. And I think that people got some ass backwards priorities in this world. But I'll tell you who's happy right now. Jeff Hardy, who has really had the heat and the spotlight and the attention and the headlines taken off of him after the story broke on Vince McMahon. And what about Cody Rhodes? You know, excuse me, my nose is itching. Cody has found himself in some incredible luck. When he left AEW, many thought that was a crazy decision. Many questioned if it was the right decision. Why would he leave AEW to go back to a place that he claimed he hated, and how WWE mismanages so much talent? You know, he's going to be so misused there. He's going to regret it. And it was an instant success. One of the coolest WrestleMania moments in recent memories when he came out. Had a great match with Seth Rollins, great program with Seth Rollins, and then seemingly suffers a devastating injury that is really going to put the brakes on his run, his push, and seemed at the time to be just the biggest kick in the balls ever. But he ends up wrestling a 5-star match through that injury and gets even more appreciation from the crowd. Gets his surgery, he's on the shelf, and then the Vince McMahon story breaks. Cody is going to get to sit out all of this. He's going to come back in January. Hopefully by then we have some sort of conclusion. Hopefully by then the investigation has revealed its findings and its recommendations. Maybe whatever the fallout here is has happened by the time Cody comes back. Maybe not. Maybe the investigation takes a year. But if it only takes a couple of months, they figure out what they need to figure out. They make the recommendations. WWE either adheres by them or doesn't. But whatever the case is, by the time we get to Cody coming back, hopefully some of the dust is settled. Which again, even when Cody is unlucky with an injury, it still winds up being a lucky one because he gets to bypass all this shit. And instead of potentially winning the Money in the Bank or winning the WWE title while this shitstorm is going on, he gets to come back and win it when it's over. So Cody has even kind of landed on his feet here, possibly, depending on how long the investigation takes. But, man, quite the mess in WWE land right now. We spent a good portion of the hour talking about that. So we should probably wrap the Vince McMahon stuff and move on to Sasha Banks. But let me cruise over here to the chat, get caught up on some comments, see if there's any super chats I need to knock out, which I believe there is, and ask you guys to please do me a favor and smash that thumbs up button. I would really appreciate it. It might have been... did I get everybody? All right, I got those. I just need to get to you. Michael Cuomo, thank you for the $2. Truth is stranger than fiction, huh, Greg? Yes, and I got to tell you, man, this whole situation in WWE, I knew that today was going to be a fun podcast because I find this shit way more interesting than any storylines WWE currently does. I find this shit more interesting than anything WWE has done in the last 20 years. It's crazy, but maybe not further back than 20 years because if you joined us yesterday for the Judgment Day 2000 review, we talked about how fun that time period was. Population 420, welcome back, dude, and thanks again for the $5. Wow, what a week of wrestling. I don't know if Vince can buy himself to get out of this one. SmackDown was really good, and July should be great with 2 premium shows. Yeah, July's got Money in the Bank and SummerSlam, and the Riddle and Roman Reigns match last night was fantastic. But yeah, that's what I've been talking about this whole time. It seemed like immediately on Wednesday when this story broke, or when the Wall Street Journal published that article, it had a different vibe. Every other time Vince has had some weird allegation, I've really never thought much of it. Even during the steroid trial, I wasn't totally sure what was going on. I knew Vince was off TV. I did read some articles about it, and I knew it was happening. But yeah, I don't know. You're a little bit less freaked out when you're 17 years old. But this time, I never really felt like WWE was in true, real, clear danger. After Owen died, they could have been screwed. After Benoit died, they could have been screwed. And they kept surviving. And I always really felt that they weren't in any real, true danger, or Vince wasn't in any danger of losing his position or anything like that. Closest he came was when he went on trial for steroids. But this really feels like it's had that vibe right from the start, that there is an investigation. They're going to uncover stuff. So at that point, he either gets to stay in power knowing all these dirty things about him, or he doesn't. You know, the investigation is going to uncover some skeletons. There's no way it's not. If you think this is the first time Vince has ever paid someone to shut the fuck up, you crazy. It's going to turn up a lot of stuff. Clofix C, thank you for the 2 from you. These grapefruits are clean. Yeah. They probably aren't that clean. Appreciate all these comments. Sorry, I don't have a chance to read all of them. Oh, K-Dog's Kennel, good to see you. Good to see K-Dogs. He sponsored yesterday's review, and really happy to hear about your health update there, my friend. Max Pokebra, appreciate that 5 from you. While Tony Khan is nowhere near as bad as Vince, does he not have any flaw? Of course he does. Modern pro wrestling doesn't really do it for me. AEW is not really for me. See, that's fine. Yeah, even modern wrestling doesn't really do it for me either. It's just I had this YouTube channel, and so I forced myself to stay focused on wrestling even when I didn't really love what WWE was doing. But now that we have a competing organization, you know, that's, I think, what wrestling is desperately needed, a safe, credible alternative. You know, TNA, yes, they were there, but they weren't like AEW. They didn't have that cable deal. They were all over the place. They were on the internet first, then they got on Spike TV, then they were on another network, Mondays, Thursdays, head-to-head with Raw. You never even knew what the fuck was going on there. You know, 6-sided ring, 4-sided ring, you know, just constant changes all the time happening. AEW just seems like they have great production, great money, great funding, and a good TV deal behind them. That's what you need. TV deals are everything. And despite what you think of AEW's ratings, they're not going anywhere. TNT and TBS will renew their deal, and they will get more money than they did last time. They are not going to get canceled. They're not going anywhere. TV is everything, and that was a big part of WCW. Part of the reason why Vince was able to buy WCW for $35 was because they had no TV deal. And all he was buying is the tapes and the rings. That was it. You know, so TV is everything. And Tony Khan is not perfect. Tony Khan's going to make a lot of missteps. He already has. His behavior is kind of funny. I don't think his behavior is bad, but he's kind of a kooky kind of guy. I'd rather have that. I'd rather have like a really kind of marches to the beat of his own drummer, hardcore wrestling fan in charge of a wrestling promotion than some corporate dipshit. You know what I mean? So I think people are way too hard on him. But yes, he's got lots of flaws. AEW's only 3 years old. You think Tony Khan's not going to make any more mistakes? You think the big swole thing is the only thing wrong he's going to do? He's going to do lots of shit, you know, not necessarily wrong or illegal or bad, just maybe make decisions that weren't the best ones. Doesn't mean he deserves to die, you know, just means that it's going to be a learning process. Running a wrestling company, $1 billion company, ain't easy. So he's not going to make every single decision correctly because it's his first time doing this shit. He's going to learn. Experience is everything. You know, by the time we get to 20 years from now, Tony Khan will be older, and he will have seen a lot of different scenarios. He'll see people come, he'll see people go, he'll know how to deal with releases, with defections, with signings, with disgruntled employees, with concussions, with drug abuse, with, of his talent, all sorts of stuff he's going to deal with as the years go on. And that's how you learn. That's how you learn to do anything. You know, were you good the first time you rode a bike? No, it took you a while. But after you practice for a while, you're pretty good, goddamn good at riding that bike, weren't you? It's the same thing in pretty much anything. So I think there's definitely flaws in everybody. Nobody's perfect at all. But I do think that people, the things that people choose to attack someone over are usually pretty goddamn flimsy. And it's usually less about that and more about the social media wars that they've created in their head. I actually put up a big 5-tweet thread last night at like 2 o'clock in the morning where I was thinking about this idiocy in the wrestling world because I saw a graphic. It was for Forbidden Door. I love that AEW's brought back the motion graphics, and there was a Forbidden Door graphic with Moxley and Tanahashi, and it looked so awesome. But underneath, every fucking comment from these bad faith fuckwads are just like, nobody knows who Tanahashi is. Nobody knows. Look at the rating AEW got. And in my mind, like, making a wrestling show illegitimate in your mind because the wrestlers on the card aren't as big of stars as WWE is literally the least pro wrestling fan thing you can do. Completely. Like, why is pointing out that 60-year-old WWE is a bigger company than 3-year-old AEW? Why is that considered a burn? No shit. WWE does twice their ratings. I would hope so. They've been around for 60 fucking years. AEW's been around for 36 months. Of course they're going to be twice their size. Of course they're going to do better numbers, revenues, ticket sales, ratings, things like that. But I think AEW has been comparable. And when you look at AEW themselves compared to WWE, AEW has been the consistent ones with their ratings. They had a big dip on Wednesday that everybody whacked off to and got so excited about. Yeah, wrestling fans excited for low ratings. Let that sink in. Actually excited about this low rating. I'm like, just chill out, Sparky. They had one fucking bad week that apparently was down across the board in AEW. Or I'm sorry, on cable TV. Everything was down. But when you look at AEW's ratings from the beginning in 2019 until now, basically everything is in that 800 to 1.1, 800K to 1.1 million range. A few times they've dipped below 800K. A few times they've pushed above 1.1. I think they topped out at like 1.4. So their ratings have been incredibly consistent, usually in that 900,000 range, somewhere in there. Where you look at WWE, they're the ones all over the place. Look at their numbers from 2010 till now. Tell me who's declining here. The line goes like this all the way down to today. So it's almost like I used to bowl. And in bowling, and I know in golf too, you have something called handicap. And a handicap allows you to compete with people who are technically better than you because you're really competing with yourself. So for example, if my bowling average is a 220, which it was at my peak, and I'm bowling against somebody with a 120 average, let's say I bowl a 180 and the person with the 120 average bowls a 140. I beat him by 40 pins, but I bowled worse than my average. He bowled better. Therefore, he wins because he did better than his normal numbers. So I guess I kind of look at it like that. I look at AEW inside of the numbers that they get, which if anybody thinks are terrible or bad or TNT's going to cut them loose, you're crazy. They're going to get re-signed. They're going to get a new deal. TBS and TNT will continue to run Dynamite and Rampage for many more years. But their ratings have been consistent, relatively consistent. So jumping on one bad week, what's going to happen next week when the ratings kind of go back to normal and they're back to the 900K? This whole week, you have 6 days of people whacking off thinking that AEW's going out of business because in their minds, they have no attention span. So what happened on Wednesday is the last thing that's ever going to happen in wrestling, and no wrestling show is ever going to happen again. That's going to be their final finishing rating. What happens in 6 days when it goes back up into 900K? What's your excuse then? To jump on this stuff and to get so excited, over little shit like this, to me just proves the wrestling fans' immaturity. And what I was saying in the tweet last night in the thread, I'm like, what other form of entertainment is like this? Take basketball, for example. You guys basketball fans, wouldn't you agree that a lot of basketball fans love the NCAA, love college basketball? Many of the people I know, because I used to live in North Carolina where college is life, many people I know go way more nuts over March Madness than they do the NBA Finals. The whole country is involved in March Madness. The NBA Finals is just 2 cities. People love filling out their brackets. The excitement, the atmosphere, the energy in a college basketball game. Exact same thing with football. A lot of fans love the NFL and college football, just like many fans love NBA and college basketball. Most fans love both, but a lot of fans prefer the amateurs. A lot of fans prefer college football over the NFL and college basketball over the NBA. There's no LeBrons or Kevin Durant's in college. They're all in the NBA. All the megastars, all the Roman Reigns and Randy Ortons are in the NBA. So why does college do just as good a business? Why does the NCAA Finals do really good comparable numbers to the NBA Finals? Because people are a fan of basketball. What about music? Music snobs? Some of you might be music snobs. Wouldn't you agree that most people who love music appreciate good local live music from a local band trying to make it just as much as they appreciate the platinum albums they have on their phone or in their car or in their CD player? What happens when these mega bands become huge, start to get watered down, start having turmoil, lose band members, release a few shitty albums in a row? Fans get bored with them, call them sellouts. What do? They start looking for alternatives, start looking elsewhere for other music they like, sometimes even branching out into indie shit, or maybe trying out another genre, see how they like it. I've been in restaurants my whole life. I've learned a lot about food. There's a lot of good food all over the world, Mexican and Italian, Japanese food, Chinese food. There's so much amazing cuisine all over the world. Try everything. You should try it all. See what you like. But don't sit here and tell me McDonald's is better than the local Prime Steakhouse down the road just because McDonald's is more recognizable and everybody knows the Golden Arches. I'll take my local steakhouse over them arches any day. I'll take my local pizzeria over Domino's any fucking day of the week. And I think most of you would too. So why is it the opposite with wrestling? If you're a fan of something, shouldn't you be a fan of something? If you like professional wrestling, shouldn't you, like professional wrestling? Shouldn't you like to watch other kinds of it? Instead of just one promotion and then getting yourself so caught up in a social media war by insecurely shitting on what someone who you'll never meet likes? Am I the only one who finds that to be a colossal waste of time? Because that's all I see on social media, is everybody downplaying the other company. And I'm not just picking on the AEW haters. WWE haters and AEW nut boys, you're just as bad. Because as much as WWE makes me laugh my ass off at how fucking sucky they are, they do some shit right. I thought WrestleMania was a great show. Cody's entrance made me fucking cry. Last night, Riddle and Roman Reigns had a hell of a match. WWE's got talent there. The roster is fucking depleted right now with injuries, but there's still great talent there. Great matches can be had. Great pay-per-views can be had. Look at how great Hell in a Cell was when it was coming off a build that was largely uneventful. Cody and Seth was, really the center of that. And even that match was nearly in jeopardy there. So WWE can still do plenty of things right. There's no reason to diminish that. There's no reason to attack Cody for betraying the AEW audience. I'm happy Cody went to WWE. Looking at him there, that was the right call for him. I wasn't sure if it was at the time when the announcement was made and you were like, holy shit, he's leaving AEW? How's that going to work? Turns out that it might have been one of the smartest career moves Cody Rhodes has ever made for himself. And I think it will be, because I think he's going to be WWE champion one day. So this exists on both sides. I'm not saying this is just one-sided here. But to be this way about wrestling, to claim you're a fan, and then purposely shit on anything you can about the other company because you've been insecure enough to allow people who you don't even fucking know bother you on social media when you should be out there smelling that air, touching that grass. And I think we're seeing some real ugliness lately with the Vince McMahon stuff because you can truly see how transparent and how hypocritical people really are. Dive all up the ass of Tony Khan for telling Eric Bischoff he's a fucking moron, yet thinking Vince McMahon, fucking someone half his age, is totally fine and paying her hush money to keep quiet is totally, perfectly peachy. Embarrassing, man. So, anywho, a lot going on, obviously, in the wrestling world. We need to talk about Sasha Banks, Mercedes. There is some reports going around that she has been released. Now, Raj Giri reported the news way back on Wednesday. He simply tweeted, I'm hearing Sasha Banks has been released. Don't know if it was requested or if they just let her go. He doesn't know. Raj, who's a good guy, goes way back, one of the originators in the wrestling internet. I talk to him every now and then on Twitter, and we follow each other, and he's a pretty reliable source for the most part. I've never seen, maybe just because it's Sasha Banks related and the Sasha Banks people are nuts, but he has been so attacked. And I love the butthurtness that social media gets about wrestling journalism. They're always complaining about wrestling journalism. I mean, you don't have any issues with wrestling journalism. You just get the idea in your head that you don't like this person or you don't like Sean Ross Sapp or you don't like somebody. So then you start masking, your fucking bullshit vendetta that you've created for yourself behind your desire to have credible wrestling journalism. They are credible. And most of the information I've ever gotten off of Fightful or off of Raj or off a lot of people has usually been pretty credible. So there's all this aggression, towards these people that are just reporting that what they hear. Raj has got a couple of sources backstage, as do a lot of people. They told him she was released. It's a credible source that he's delivered and used to deliver news before. Why would that person deliberately lie to him? And why would he, put that out there? And if it turns out not to be true, he said himself he will never use that person as a source again. and just said, all he said was, I'm hearing Sasha Banks is released. Didn't report it as fact or anything like that. Other sites have picked up on it. Sean Ross Sapp has been working to confirm it, although nothing from WWE's end. WrestleVotes said the same thing Sean does. They've talked to people in the company, and most people in the company that they've spoke to believe that Sasha Banks has been released. The only people that have not confirmed this yet is WWE. And yet there's so much aggression, so much arguing going on social media about whether she's released or not. Does it even really matter? We're going to find out one way or the other sooner or later. If she has been released, WWE will tell us. They're probably just holding back because this whole situation makes them look bad. That Sasha Banks and Naomi said, fuck you, you guys suck, and we're leaving. Now, Naomi, I kind of feel like if Sasha Banks has been released and Naomi has not, I feel like Naomi might be back. She's married to an Uso. Sounds like this whole situation was Sasha kind of leading the way here and maybe Naomi following her a bit. So maybe the company can bring Naomi back, but Sasha they're going to go ahead and cut ties with. And I kind of believe it as well. I mean, you've got 3 pretty credible news sources here that have all said they've heard the same thing about Sasha Banks' release. The only thing we're waiting for is WWE to confirm it. But why would it be that surprising? Why is this such a debatable topic? What shocks you about Sasha Banks being let go? She walked out of TV when she had a scheduled match in the main event over creative frustration. You can argue which side of the fence you want to be on that. If you actually want to defend WWE's day-to-day clusterfuck, be my guest. But that doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter if you agree with Sasha did or not. She left. So if they release her, why is that weird? If you walk out on the job, you kind of should be fired, if you ask me. I think she probably would be fine with that. I hope Sasha gets let go, because she is a superstar. I think Sasha should be Charlotte. I think Sasha should be in Charlotte's position. I think she should be winning just as many titles as Charlotte. Now, Sasha has developed a great WWE resume for herself. She always has been involved in big stories and top stuff and has been women's champion several times. But, she's got crossover appeal. She is a star. She's already doing some TV and movie stuff. She has said herself on Broken Skull Sessions, I eat steak now. I stay at four-star hotels. I'm not the starving artist anymore. I've worked hard to get to this point, and I'm going to enjoy this lifestyle. And she knows it. And a lot of people have said WWE needs her. She doesn't need WWE. I don't even think they really need each other, to be honest. Now, WWE losing Sasha Banks is a big loss. Do not get me wrong. I think Sasha Banks is one of the best competitors they have on that entire women's roster. I think Sasha and Bayley, I like the best of everybody there. So losing her is a big deal, but at the end of the day, the machine will keep running, But Sasha Banks, she could go into Hollywood, she could branch out into other stuff, or she could turn up in AEW. I guess she'd be Mercedes Banks, or that's actually kind of a cool name, or Sasha Mirando, or whatever her last name is. She's obviously going to have to be something else. But imagine, that right there, honestly, I think she's the Daniel Bryan version of the women's division. In terms of the level of where she is on the card. She's not Roman Reigns, or Daniel Bryan's not Roman Reigns, just like Sasha isn't Charlotte, but they're damn close. And that's a big get, or that would be a big get for AEW. So maybe WWE's holding off on the announcement of the release, so she's not immediately contacted by AEW for coming in. But I think if people say she's gone, she's probably gone. I can't see what's going to happen that's going to be able to bring her back. What kind of agreement, what kind of meeting can she possibly have with WWE management that she's going to say, yeah, I'm willing to give it another shot? When you're frustrated enough to fucking leave, I don't know if you are coming back. So I was surprised to see all of the, staunch debating online about whatever this is. Just wait and see what happens. It's not really worth getting your panties in a bunch over, I don't personally think. But anywho, we got some sad news to get into next, although I want to answer a couple of super chats and ask you guys to please smash that thumbs up button for me if you don't mind. And like I said, if you are not a subscriber, you better become one. It takes one finger. See that little red thing down there? Hit it with your finger. Hit it. Subscribe. Let me see. Oh, that's cool. You're going to be at Forbidden Door. I just want to make sure I get all of these super chats out. Max, thank you for 2 more bucks. By the way, I'm going to be at Forbidden Door. That's awesome. That should be a pretty damn fun show to watch at the United Center. You Watt M8 appreciate the 2 from you. Cheers back to you, man. Thank you so much for being here. 2 more from Victor Colon as well. As long as we have good wrestling, I'm happy. That's all I ask for, too. I don't give a fuck where the wrestling's happening. I don't care what initials are on the banner hanging above the ring. Just give me some good wrestling that doesn't suck. God damn, how hard is that? So that's why, I'm going to generally be the most interested in whatever wrestling is the best at the time. Sometime when WrestleMania season is around, WWE's got some pretty good shit on tap, but AEW, I think, knocks it out of the park on most Dynamites and does a really good job of not doing what WWE does. Because one thing about Dynamite, it does not give you that same shit, different day vibe that Raw and SmackDown do. It's not as formulaic, not as redundant, doesn't look the same. I cannot tell ever what arena Raw or SmackDown is in. Can never tell. Every single arena looks the same. Dynamite, totally different story. They don't run the big basketball arenas. They run smaller venues, 10,000, 8,000, 12,000 seat arenas. It's more intimate. Even though they generally have the same set for Dynamite, it still has different vibes from venue to venue, wherever they go. And we as fans know that we care about that. Don't pretend you don't, because haven't we always talked about back in the day, WWE's great pay-per-view sets, the extra effort they went through to utilize the venue they're in and make it unique for that show. They don't do that anymore. Everything's so streamlined now. Everything's so cost-effective. That's why every, the big screen and the big shit. The Titantron isn't even a Titantron anymore. You notice that? Like, the Titantron used to be the big, screen hanging from the stage, and now it's a screen within the larger screen. I mean, that's what it's been reduced down to. So it's, that's another thing that just takes away the individuality of a lot of these shows, and the vibe that makes them special is gone in WWE. Everything looks the same. Even the goddamn pay-per-views look the same. Everything's the same. And you just don't get that as much in AEW, and I appreciate that. And I wish WWE could go back to doing things the way they used to, man. The pay-per-view sets especially. Backlash used to have those swinging hooks, the big Deadly Game skull. The houses and In Your House, although they do In Your House now. Miss those days, man. They don't do that at all. And AEW does give you a little bit more of that, which I appreciate. But anyway, Steven Scott, I want to thank you as well for your $5. This will probably be a future Dark Side of the Ring Vince McMahon hush money scandal. Yeah, it was reported, though, that the next season of Dark Side of the Ring is going to have a pretty heavy WWE influence on it, which means Dark Side of the Ring is over. Because if they're going to start presenting stories with WWE spin, I got a whole goddamn shelf of DVDs back here that tell the stories of the way WWE wants them told. The whole point of Dark Side of the Ring is to get a different viewpoint. So I don't know how that's even going to work out next season, but Vince McMahon's hush money scandal and everything else this investigation turns up could definitely be a future documentary somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, yeah, another good example there, Taco Bell. I live in San Diego, so not going to a local taco stand. I'd rather eat a taco out of the back of a truck, on the side of the road here in San Diego than eat anything from Taco Bell, because San Diego knows it's Mexican food. That's for sure. The border is right there. So we know, but we don't run for the border around here. Zane G, appreciate the $2. Here's $2 for your rants. The best one yet. Well, I appreciate that, man. Thank you. All right. I think that's all the super chats there. Let's get into some sad news to report. Longtime WWE official and twin brother of Earl Hebner, Dave Hebner, has passed away yesterday. There was a report that came out, I believe, early last month that I did see that stated he was dealing with some health complications. I don't know what those complications were. He did pass away, I believe, yesterday at the age of 73. Earl Hebner and Brian Hebner, right, the son, have both tweeted out about the passing. Brian wishing, the best for his passed away uncle, and of course Earl, Dave was his other half. They were identical twins. Now, I've met Dave Hebner. I have a really cool Dave Hebner story. Dave Hebner was the one that basically came and got me. I've talked about this house show I went to all the time back in 1996, where Vince McMahon's secretary, Beth, who I kind of developed a little bit of a relationship with in the 90s, and she was really good with me. She was his personal secretary. Tell you somebody who knows some of Vince's skeletons, Beth Zaza does. But Beth was great to me on more than one occasion, helping me out with tickets, helping me out with backstage stuff. And I was heading to Detroit for a family reunion. WWE happened to be in town for a house show at the Joe. I called her up, and she goes, great, let me know. She goes, do you have tickets yet? And I said, I do. She goes, give me your seats, and I'm going to send someone over to you at intermission. And who showed up? Dave Hebner. And he was there with Gerald Briscoe. They brought me and my dad back, walked us around, introduced us to people, got to take a couple of pictures, and just kind of hang out backstage for a little bit. They gave me a little gift bag on the way out the door, which included a Ultimate Warrior t-shirt. And that was the very same show that he no-showed that got him fired, right before International Incident. Very same show. That was the one. So Dave was great. He was so nice. And on top of that, the Hebners occupy one of my biggest wrestling memories ever. I sat in my living room with my mom and dad in February of 1988 and watched the main event. I have this recorded off of live TV on a VHS tape. Still to this day, I have the copy of it. Biggest wrestling audience in history, 30-something million fucking people. NBC prime time. And it was Hulk Hogan against Andre the Giant. And Andre won the title with the twin referee. That was right when Earl had just come over from the NWA. I think Dave was already there. Then they brought Earl Hebner in, who was reffing in the NWA. Dave Hebner was a referee in WWE at first, and then when Earl came in, Earl took over most of the ref duties, and then Dave would, shortly after that, be pushed backstage into an official role, and he'd be there with, Tony Gurria and Rene Goulet and Patterson and all those guys. So the twin referee thing was a big deal because Dave Hebner, I think it was Dave or Earl. Earl was the referee. Dave Hebner was already a referee in WWE. So all during the match, they were calling the referee Dave Hebner, but it was really Earl Hebner. So Earl Hebner was the one that did the 3 count. And then when Hogan is literally crying in the middle of the ring after Andre and DiBiase leave with the title, Dave Hebner then shows up, and the two referees get in a fight, and that's when Hogan realizes that Earl was an evil referee, and he picks him up and throws him over the top rope into Andre and DiBiase. And then backstage, again, Hogan is doing an interview, literally crying, sobbing and weeping over his WWE title loss and how much money for the plastic surgery. They tried to pass it off like this is some regular guy that got plastic surgery and to look like Dave Hebner. So I guess in storyline, the reason why they didn't have two Hebners refereeing is because, Dave was supposedly replaced by an imposter, but they would slowly stop calling Dave Hebner. They would start referring to Earl as Earl, and Earl would be the primary referee and would go on to be the senior referee all the way up there through the Attitude Era, while Dave would take a step back in an official role behind the scenes. And you could tell them apart after 88. Like in 88, they still look pretty similar, but Dave was much bigger. Earl was much skinnier, and Dave had him outweighed a bit. So you could easily tell them apart. But you would always see Dave Hebner, though. Like if you go back and watch some of those late 80s, early 90s pay-per-views, you'd always see him out there at ringside if officials were needed. WrestleMania 8, when Savage and Flair had their big brouhaha after the match and Flair kissed Elizabeth, all those officials were out there. You could see Dave, you could see Shane, so you could always catch a glimpse of Dave Hebner every now and then in WWE. And I remember that night in 88, the twin referee, watching that with my parents, watching Hogan lose the title. I was very conflicted about it. I was very upset about it. I was very mad at Ted DiBiase, and I had to go to bed that night angry that for the first time since I was 6 years old, Hogan, I couldn't believe that. I mean, for the first time since I was 6 years old, Hulk Hogan was not the WWE champion, and that was tough for a little kid to go to sleep knowing that. So great memories of Dave Hebner. Rest in peace to a very recognizable face in wrestling, and condolences to Earl and Brian and the entire Hebner family. They were great. Earl Hebner, I did see also, was going to be officially retiring from refereeing, and they were, their finish and ending in WWE wasn't that great either. They were let go due to some shady merchandise dealings or something like that. And I always felt like Earl Hebner at least should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. He was a big part of the 1990s. He refereeing some of the biggest matches in WWE history, all the Attitude Era matches. He refereed the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12. The Earl I always thought, should have been a bigger deal in WWE, but when they were let go, we never really saw them return. Earl turned up in AEW once or twice, I believe, and, Dave really didn't do much. But it's a sad death to report, and that's a shame. So we will move on now, I guess, a little bit of last night's SmackDown. I don't want to talk about the whole show. There's just a few things we have to talk about because one of the biggest stories of the week that I haven't even mentioned yet was Brock Lesnar coming back. So last night on SmackDown, of course, we talked all about the Vince McMahon saga and the scandal and the investigation and his appearance on SmackDown earlier on at the beginning of the podcast. If you haven't heard that, you can scroll back and listen. So, of course, Vince opened the show. He came out and did his thing. And the only matches I really want to talk about here are the Madcap Moss and Baron Corbin match. They had a last laugh match with which Madcap won. And then after the match, it looks like Baron Corbin is going to be starting a feud with Pat McAfee. Gets on the mic, starts running down Pat McAfee, talks about their history together. Apparently they do go way back because they both played football. And I think Corbin even passed through the NFL as well. So they probably have met or have known each other from their football days. And I'm happy about this because, number one, finally the Corbin and Madcap stuff is done. And Corbin moving into a feud with McAfee can be a lot of fun. They might even push this. This might be our SummerSlam match, and that would be perfectly fine with me. McAfee against Baron Corbin. So they kind of got that underway. Also, Max Dupri, I didn't even see the segment. I just saw that he did a backstage thing with Adam Pearce, and he has refused to announce who his first client of this male model shit that he's doing. So I was hoping it was going to be Zoolander, but apparently he's still not going to announce that. Last week, he was supposed to announce it, and they claimed that he was stuck in Europe traveling and couldn't make it. So I can't tell, or I could probably have a pretty good idea, but I'm not totally sure if this is all done by design or if WWE really just doesn't know what the fuck they're doing yet, so they keep postponing this stuff. Now, one interesting rumor I did see was about Cesaro. Now, Cesaro has been rumored to maybe turn back up in AEW. He has, I guess, been let go by WWE quietly. But some have been speculating in the last week or so that he could be maybe re-signing with the WWE and sticking around. If they really don't want to lose him to AEW, they could offer him a deal that he finds acceptable this time. And he would be a perfect guy. Now, I still don't think it would really mean anything. I don't trust WWE in this Max Dupri faction. I don't trust them to do anything. I don't trust them to wipe their own ass. So I don't believe for a second that this Max Dupri male model faction is going to be anything good. You don't have to look any further than Raw to see what WWE did to the Hurt Business, a faction that looked so attractive that all of the fans loved. I loved those four guys. I wanted to go out to eat dinner at a steakhouse with MVP and Lashley and Cedric and Shelton. Just the five of us walking in somewhere. I would feel like such a badass. Love those guys. This should be a faction that would have been so easy to make work. It was over right from the word go. All of the fans like every member of the faction. Not one member of that faction is disliked by the audience. People respect the hell out of Lashley. They respect the hell out of Shelton, maybe even more. Everybody loves MVP, and everybody loves the athleticism of Cedric Alexander. So if WWE can't make the Hurt Business work, what can they make work? So, yeah, even though I think it would fit for Cesaro to be the first member of the male model, because he does look great in a suit. He's got a haircut that's just extremely sexy, I should know. And he looks the part. But at the same time, he's already been in WWE for years with a couple of glimpses of opportunities, but really nothing came of them. And what is this going to do? You're going to come out there as some douchey male model? You're a little bit old to be a male model. I think Cesaro's pushing 40. Obviously, he's in great shape. But I don't really think modeling agencies look for people in their 40s. They generally look for people in their early 20s or even younger than that in most cases. So we'll see if Max Dupri just has a thing for older dudes. I don't know, but he has still continued to put that off. So we'll see if Cesaro turns out to be the guy or not. And, of course, last night in the main event of SmackDown, we had Roman Reigns in his first title defense since WrestleMania, taking on Riddle for the title, and this was a really good match. You know, and Riddle and Roman working together is interesting because Riddle has ran his mouth in the past about Roman, about Seth Rollins, and, you know, has ruffled a few feathers. But Riddle, you know, I think he's a star in the making. I think he's great in the ring. He's got legitimacy to him. And all of these matches here, eventually could translate into a Rumble and a Mania victory one day. WWE has done a abysmal job of making new stars and shit like that, which is why when we have injuries, they have to do things like break open the Brock Lesnar glass because there's no Randy Orton around right now and there's no Cody around. But really, there's plenty of other talent on the roster. WWE is not lacking in talent. They've lacked in stars that they've failed to create. The talent is there. Kevin Owens and AJ and Bobby Lashley. There's plenty of guys more than capable, more than worthy of being at the top of the WWE mountain, but it's been how they've been utilized. Any of those guys now plugged into the SummerSlam match against Roman Reigns is going to look like a weak opponent, because they usually like to have mega matches for this. And if you were going to have Cody cash in Money in the Bank at SummerSlam, if that was your initial plan, now you have to make a quick detour. So obviously something has changed in the last couple of weeks since Cody's injury. I don't know if Brock was supposed to come back. He probably was supposed to come back to build something for SummerSlam because he was originally scheduled for Money in the Bank and they took him off the advertisement. So I guess we were probably going to see him anyway. But hell, now we're going to be doing Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns again. So after Roman beats Riddle goes for like a springboard, second rope springboard thing, and Roman catches him with the spear, pins him, gets the win, retains the title, and then gets on the mic and starts talking about how there's nobody left. He's defeated everybody. He's beat them all. There's literally no one left. And he's kind of right. But you could tell with his promo that somebody was going to come out. The way he's talking about this, I didn't see Brock Lesnar as being that person. I should have been no surprise to me that in case of emergency, Brock opened glass. But I was thinking it would be somebody else. I thought it would be somebody from Raw. I thought it might be Bobby Lashley. And it turned out to be Brock Lesnar. He comes out, stare down with Roman, offers a handshake. Roman goes to take it, and then Brock lifts him up in the F5 and hits him with the F5. So after SmackDown went off the air, WWE announced that it is official at SummerSlam. Roman Reigns will defend the Universal title, the undisputed Universal title against Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam in a last man standing match. So it's about the only match they haven't done. So if you guys remember back to WrestleMania, I was adamant that this match between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns was the right match to happen at WrestleMania. A lot of people were complaining that we've seen it too much. It's too many matches. And I said, yeah, you're kind of right, but really it's 7 matches in 7 years. It's not like these guys are working. For example, Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins worked 24 times between WrestleMania and when he got injured. 24 times on the house show loop. So for me, Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns wrestling 7 times in 7 years is not that much. The problem is they're wrestling a lot on pay-per-view. It seems like it's WWE's go-to feud, and I was defending it because I said all along last year during the Crown Jewel match and the other one they had and then the WrestleMania stuff, I said it's not the same as it was in 2015. When Roman was the rejected John Cena 2.0 babyface that everybody hated, that had boring promos, that didn't connect with the audience, that nobody was interested in, and Brock Lesnar, people liked Brock for his legitimacy, but even by then, he was starting to get scrutiny from the fans too for holding on to the title too long and never defending it and not being on TV a lot. And fans were just soured on both guys. But when they rekindled the rivalry in 2021 or whatever it was, and you had Tribal Chief Roman Reigns versus Cowboy Brock Lesnar, that changed the entire game for me. I'm like, no longer is this the 5th, 6th, 7th match between these two guys. It's the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, because we've never seen these two characters this way face each other before. When they faced each other previously, they were completely two different people. And now Roman Reigns has become the best actor in the company, a guy that we thought was going to be dead in the water and WWE's going to shove down our throats until we puked. He turns it around and has made one hell of a heel character. And Brock seemed like he was having the time of his life. Cowboy hat, laughing it up every week, and just being hugely entertaining. I did not think he would thrive and spread his wings the way he did without Paul Heyman. I like him better without Paul Heyman. I can't believe I'm saying that. I thought the Brock and Paul combo was money, was perfection. And Brock going out on his own, you see what an entertaining guy he really is. So I loved all of that. I really did think it was the right match to have because it's your two strongest characters that you have. And what I said during WrestleMania time when I was defending this match to all the people who says, I don't want to see it 7 times. I said, look, I understand that it feels like it's been a lot of times that they've wrestled, but it really, really hasn't when you think about it. So what I said is I'm okay with them wrestling a 7th time because I think you need a blow-off. You need a conclusion. Everything that they've done so far is leading to this one final match. So what I said, and I quote, I said, I'm okay with a 7th match, but what I would not be okay with is an 8th match. It needs to end here. If this is it, if this is all they do at WrestleMania, then it's the right thing to do. Now, and I even said, now if they turn around and do it again at SummerSlam, then you guys are going to have a point. Well, guess what? You have a point. We don't need this again, but WWE's own doing. This is WWE's fault. The reason they have to go to Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns is because they got nothing else. And their other plans, we heard the rumors of Randy Orton, which that even surprised me. Randy Orton going up against Roman Reigns for the title, okay, but even as big of a star as Randy Orton is, he doesn't seem like somebody who's a real credible threat to the championship. I was surprised enough that he beat Drew McIntyre for it. But if John Cena didn't beat Roman Reigns last year, I don't see Randy Orton doing it this year. So I thought Randy was just used as just an opponent to put in there with Roman Reigns. I think the build would have been good because Randy Orton doesn't sweat anybody, and I think it would have been really fun between them. But it was only a few years ago that Randy Orton took on Brock Lesnar in the main event of SummerSlam, and got left laying in a pool of his own blood. So I don't think that either of those guys were really a credible threat to Roman Reigns, but at the same time, to bring in Brock Lesnar, it's not rare for WrestleMania rematches to take place at SummerSlam, but it seems rare this time, considering, I guess it wasn't a true clean win at WrestleMania. Did Roman Reigns nut shot him? Was that what it was? Is that how he got the win? Was it a nut shot and a spear for the win? That might have been it. I remember the match kind of ended abruptly, and I remember the match did not live up to the hype that I was hoping it would. So now we're doing it at SummerSlam. Now you would think this has to be the true, real blow-off between these two, a last man standing match. I mean, the only thing left to do was a Hell in a Cell, which I suppose they could do, but now it seems like they've rekindled this Roman and Brock rivalry, and now I'm more in agreement. I stand by my word. I said back at WrestleMania, I'm fine with this one, but I don't think we need any more. And now that we've gotten more, now I'm kind of with all the people that were complaining about that. Yeah, this is too much. And it's too much because it's so obvious why the match is happening. They got to go with this. SummerSlam, I think the ticket sales are lacking. It is in another big arena, right, in St. Louis. And they need a big marquee main event. And if WWE would have worked a little harder on building some of their other stars up, you could have easily plugged in AJ, Bobby Lashley, Kevin Owens, even Riddle, if you did things properly, and a number of guys in there into this match that would still make it really interesting if you would have worked hard to make these people legitimate stars in the company and cared about them as much as you do Roman Reigns or a lot of other guys. So all of the talent in the company is there, but now Roman is lacking a big-time main event opponent to face at SummerSlam, so Brock Lesnar is back. I don't agree with that decision, but I think the match itself will be probably pretty good. I wasn't too thrilled with the WrestleMania one, but a last man standing match could be pretty dramatic, and a last man standing match does open you up for all sorts of possibilities. Remember WrestleMania 31? Who's the odds-on favorite right now, according to social media, for winning Money in the Bank? Sethster, Mr. Rollins, guy that just spent the past 3 months putting over Cody in every single match they worked. I think it's time for a reward for that guy because I love Seth. And he's, even though I don't really truly know what his wacky-ass character is, it's the most entertaining I've ever found Seth Rollins in his entire career. So I know a lot of fans are going to, because they're programmed to say this, we already saw this. Yeah, but we saw it with 3 very different people. 7 years ago when Seth Rollins cashed in the Money in the Bank in the main event of WrestleMania 31, Seth and Roman and Brock were 3 very different people, very different characters. I think it would be a nice throwback to do the whole thing again. Many people would consider it predictable. It probably is, especially since we're thinking about it before the Money in the Bank matches even happen. Who's to say Seth Rollins even wins? But if most people felt Cody was going to win, maybe Seth would be the best next logical choice. Could argue AJ Styles. You could argue Kevin Owens, although Kevin Owens already got, a chance against Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble that year or whatever it was. So I think that Seth winning the Money in the Bank does set up a really interesting cash-in opportunity at SummerSlam in the Brock-Roman match, so you don't really have to beat one of these guys. How does that work? If Seth comes out to cash in, can he cash in the middle of the match, essentially stopping the match and then making it a one-on-one with him and the champion, or can he enter himself in as a triple threat last man standing match? That's what I would do. I would do some crazy spot. I don't even know if this is allowed in the Money in the Bank rules. You ask me. But let's say Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns are on the top rope and Brock superplexes Roman off the top rope onto the floor through tables. And the two guys are dead. Out. And the referee is counting 1, 2. By the time he gets to like 6, burn it down. Out comes Seth with the briefcase, hands it to the referee and says, I want to make this a triple threat. They make the announcement. Seth stands there with his hands crossed while the referee finishes counting both guys out. New WWE champion without lifting a fucking finger. Seth Rollins, both belts up. What do you think? They could do it that way. That would certainly make an interesting cash-in. If Brock and Roman annihilate each other and Seth just comes out there and stands there while the referee counts to 10 and he wins. Can that be done? Is there a rule against it? You tell me. But I think that would work. And that would be a fun way to do it. Because you can make this fun. I like throwbacks. I like callbacks to the past. Fans automatically, we already saw that. We don't need to see it again. I'm like, you haven't seen it. You saw it 7 years ago with 3 very different people. You could do a much different scenario now that would be interesting, and it would be a good callback to what they did in 2015. I wouldn't hate that at all. Just trying to make the best out of the situation now. WWE is giving us Brock and Roman. We can't change that. So all we can do is try to figure out the best way to book the finish and what would be the most fun and what you're doing with these title belts. Is WWE going to try to pull some shady shit? Do you think that's going to happen? Are they going to announce some bullshit rule after Money in the Bank that says the briefcase holder can only cash in against one title? How much you want to bet they're going to say that? So if that whole scenario takes place and Seth Rollins runs out there and they do the whole thing the way I laid out, and he just stands there and the referee counts to 10, what if he only gets one belt? What if they award him the WWE title and then Roman keeps the blue belt to continue on and potentially break Hogan's run? He was able to drop the belt to Seth without getting pinned, without diminishing his status, because that's one of my worries if WWE does actually want to try to have Roman have a Hulk Hogan-like run and actually make it 3 years, make it 4 years. It's going to be really hard to do that if he does have a pin on his record where he lost one of the belts. So I don't even think WWE knows if they're going to keep these belts together, split them up, or however long it's going to last. I don't know. But they could just make up, because they're very good at that, they could just make up some bullshit rule in their own minds to explain why Roman only lost one of the titles. I don't know. Who knows what they're going to do? But I think that's possible, that they could do that. Ratnick, not that rules mean anything to WWE, but usually when there's a cash-in, it's not official until the match restarts. So the ref might have to start from 1. Yeah, you're true. You're right about that. And that's what I think you could still do that. Like if these guys kill each other enough, he could get up maybe before he starts counting. Like I suggested, get halfway through the count and then have Seth come out. Maybe before the ref even starts counting, as soon as the superplex through the tables spot happen. Or if they brawl through the crowd and they fall off the balcony. It's got to be some big spot that's going to keep both guys down for 2 or 3 minutes. Then you have Seth walk out there and the referee can start counting from 1. Then do that. It can still be done that way. So, yeah. And it would be different. I mean, I don't think we've seen a match end like that before. A guy winning the WWE title without having to lift a finger. Somebody that wasn't just handed the title, and bequeathed the title or given the title or awarded the title. It's actually a match where you literally do nothing. You don't even get down and pin a guy. You just stand there. You don't move a fucking muscle and you win the match. You don't get too many scenarios like that. So I think that could work. Anywho, we are just about to the end of my notes here, and then I got to get out of here and head to work very soon. But I think we should just blow through the AEW Rampage results from last night. Watched a little bit of it, but not all of it. Moxley defeating Dante Martin. That was a really good match. I enjoyed the 6-person tag. I didn't even know Leon Ruffin was there. Maybe I did and I forgot. I know he worked a dark match or something maybe a month ago that I did see, but I kind of forgot that Leon Ruff was over there in AEW working. So it was Max Caster and the Gun Club defeating Leon Ruff and Bear Country. And Max Caster had the rhyme, because I guess, was this taped? I think this was taped on Wednesday. So the story of Vince had been out by then. And he said something to the effect of, I had something to say, but they made me sign an NDA. Oh, my God. Great shit there. Jade Cargill retained the TBS title, defeating the lovely Willow Nightingale, who we always love, and retained her TBS 31-0, 33-0, something like that for Jade Cargill. And Darby Allin defeated Bobby Fish. So good little hour-long Rampage last night, but this week has been largely dominated by WWE headlines, that is for sure. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. I've got to get out of here. I appreciate you guys being here today. I know this is a very weird episode with a lot of stuff to talk about. I hope we did a good enough job kind of unpacking the Vince McMahon stuff, talking about the Sasha Banks release and all of that. And yeah, I think that's going to call it a day for me. Let me scroll over here, though, and make sure. Oh, thank you for that, Zane G. Make sure I don't have any super chats. Why did I think it was in St. Louis? Was it St. Louis last year? There was a Rumble in St. Louis. That might have been what it is. Thank you for the $2 and for reminding me that SummerSlam is in Nashville, not St. Louis. Why the hell did I think it was in St. Louis? I don't know. Something's been in St. Louis recently. That's probably what it is. But thank you for the correction on that. Just reading some of these. Yeah, this has to be it. I agree. That's what I said around WrestleMania. I'm like, Brock and Roman kind of have to have one more. They had to have that one more at WrestleMania because they had loose ends that needed to be tied up. But once that happened, that really, in my mind, should have been the end of it. And here we are just a few months later, right back to it. WWE loves that feud, don't they? Anyway, I think that's going to do it. All right, right on. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you again for being here. Like I said, make sure you follow me over on Twitter. I will let you guys know the status of tomorrow's watch-along, if we're going to do one or not. And I will have the audio of this podcast posted on the website and on the podcast sites later on this evening. So you guys can keep a lookout for that. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I will be sure to talk to you guys real soon. Y'all take care.